Skeletons of the Marital Closet. By Tang. Chapter 1971. She had thought too much. Who knew? Orum's ruthlessness was far beyond what she could have imagined. Ivy! Orum's voice suddenly rang in her ears. Do you really want to die? She could not speak and could only nod very lightly. To die would not be so bad. She had not obtained the evidence and instead had let Orum catch her. Ivy finally understood why Shawn had reminded her to prioritize her safety above all else. It turned out Orum was truly capable of being ruthless. Shawn had long seen through Orum's nature, but Ivy had still harbored naive fantasies. However, at this moment, Ivy remembered something. Shawn had given her a distress device to carry with her whenever she was with Orum. This distress device was connected to Shawn's phone. As soon as Ivy pressed it, Shawn would immediately receive the signal. She still had a chance. Ivy struggled to remember where she had placed the device. All of a sudden, she remembered that it was placed in a hidden pocket on the outside of her skirt. The skirt she wore was a luxury skirt with a hidden design, so it appeared to have no pockets. Ivy slowly reached into it. As long as she pressed it, she would be saved. Shawn would find a way to rescue her. Orum did not notice Ivy's small movement because he was staring fixedly into her eyes. You're so beautiful. It would be such a waste to die. Your career has just begun. You're still so young. How can you bear to go to hell so soon? Orum said. Ivy, a wise man knows when to retreat. Orum loosened his grip on Ivy slightly. Air flowed into Ivy's throat. Finally, she was not as suffocated as before. At the same time, Ivy found the button of the distress signal device. Just as she decided to press it, she hesitated. She had not found the evidence yet, and now she was exposed. If Mr. Wood came to save her, then what next? How would she obtain any evidence on Orum? How would Gale clear his name? Gale had been very kind to her, and she hoped he would understand the truth soon and see through Orum's true colors. What Ivy hoped for even more was for Orum to receive the punishment he deserved. Once Shawn came to rescue her from Orum's grasp, it would mean revealing everything. She would not be able to stay by Orum's side anymore. After careful consideration, Ivy let go of the distress signal device. Meanwhile, at Temperley Hall, the bathroom was filled with the sound of running water, where Gale was taking a shower. Shawn stood by the window, glancing at the silent phone on the big bed. He had a bad feeling about this, and his instincts were always right. Ivy was in a dangerous situation. However, Shawn still had not received any messages from the distress signal device. As long as Ivy pressed the button, his phone would receive a message and quickly pinpoint her location. Chapter 1972. Ivy, I gave you the distress signal device to use, not to keep as a decoration. Orum is not worth your sympathy. Any hope you place in him will only lead to utter despair for you. Shawn muttered to himself. However, the phone remained silent, without any sounds or messages. Ivy had not called for help, and Shawn could not rashly storm into Orum's home. All he could do was wait. He hoped Ivy could keep herself safe. Revenge was important, but life was even more precious. With a creak, the bathroom door opened. Gale emerged, drying her hair as she walked out. What are you looking at? She followed Shawn's gaze to the phone. Are you waiting for someone's call? He was staring at the phone with such a grave expression, as if something big was about to happen. Shawn denied, naturally walking to her side and taking over the towel to dry her hair. Nothing. Blow it dry before sleeping, or you'll get a headache. Gale obediently stood in front of him. Due to their height difference, she barely reached his chest. She could completely nestle into his embrace, feeling warm and in love. How did you feel seeing Orum and Ivy today? Their interaction seemed full of love, right? She asked. Come on, that's perfunctory. Gale pouted. Orum is naturally gentle and considerate. He would definitely save the best for Ivy. She deserves it. She's so beautiful. Look at how she's made Joshua and Nicole so happy. They even asked me before bed when they would see their fairy sister again. Shawn replied with another hum, clearly distracted. Something's off with you. You seem preoccupied. What's wrong? Tell me, Gale observed. Shawn put down the towel and turned to grab the hairdryer. It's nothing. Just don't want to hear you mention Orum. He could not say anything good about Orum, but he also could not say anything bad to avoid arguing with Gale. Oh, okay, I won't mention him. I'm just genuinely happy for Ivy, Gale agreed. The hum of the hairdryer filled the bedroom as Shawn expertly dried her hair. From his clumsy beginnings to now skillfully managing her hair, it was all thanks to time and practice. Gale yawned several times. She did not need to do anything, she just quietly cooperated with Shawn. Before bed, Shawn got up to turn off the lamp. He glanced at his phone again. Still no message. Maybe he was overthinking? Perhaps Ivy was safe and did not need to use the distress signal device. He hoped so. Shawn pulled Gale into his arms, resting his chin on the top of her head, slowly drifting into sleep. As the night went by, their house fell into silence. The study light in Orum's home remained on. Ivy sat on the carpet, rubbing her neck and coughing. Her face was red, and she took a long time to catch her breath. She did not understand why Orum had suddenly let go. Just 3 more seconds, and she would have passed out. Chapter 1973. Orum stood there with his hands behind his back, looking down at her from a high vantage point. "Didn't you want me dead? Why did you suddenly let go?" she asked. "If you die in my house, how am I supposed to explain it to Gale?" Ivy laughed. "In the end, the person you love most has always been her." "You've never loved me, not even a little bit." Orum responded. "What right do you have to be compared to her?" In Orum's heart, Gale was always unquestionably the first. No one could surpass her. From childhood to adulthood, the person Orum loved the most was Gale. "Fine, I understand." Ivy took a deep breath, slowly recovering, feeling less miserable than before. "If that's the case, then why are you with me?" "She wanted me to be with you. So, I did as she wished." Ivy laughed again. "Just because Gale wanted it, he did it. Such a pathetic love." "Orum, does that mean you would do anything Gale asked? Even if it meant walking through fire or climbing a mountain of blades?" "Yes." "You love her, cherish her, and see her as the most precious thing in the world?" "Yes." Ivy looked up at him and said slowly, "No, Orum, you don't deserve her. Gale is pure and kind, like a flawless gem. You're filthy, ruthless, and you're not worthy of her." Orum's eyes suddenly turned dangerous and violent. "Ivy, if you want to die, just say so." She propped herself up from the ground, shakily standing, meeting Orum's gaze. "What you call love is actually selfishness and destruction. You drugged her and brought her to your bed, almost ruining her innocence, her marriage, and her life. Orum, do you call that cherishing and loving her?" Ivy said. Orum let out a cold laugh. "So, you did hear everything that day? You finally admit it?" Ivy nodded vigorously. "Yes, I heard it all, every single word." "Orum, are you satisfied now? Did you get the answer you wanted? I wasn't wrong about you, Ivy. I almost let you get away with it." Orum finally heard the answer he wanted. He also confirmed his suspicions. Ivy stared at him. "Your so-called love is about destroying Gale's current happiness. Orum, how can you be so heartless? When you see Joshua and Nicole, don't you feel any guilt? They love you so much, trust you, treat you like their real uncle, and yet you want to tear their family apart. This isn't love. It isn't. Orum, you don't understand what love is, so you don't deserve to have it." Ivy screamed at him, her voice tearing. He calmly watched Ivy, a mocking smile on his lips. "Then what do you think love is?" "Ivy, is love about letting go, hoping she finds true happiness, watching her be happy without ever interfering. Is that it?" Orum asked. "Yeah," Orum snorted heavily. "Then let me tell you, from the moment I met Gale, I've done exactly as you said. I've silently protected her, stayed by her side, never disturbed her, and appeared only when she was helpless and needed me. I've done this for many, many years, ever since she married Shawn, up until now. I've always fulfilled her wishes, considered her in everything, and always put her first, completely disregarding my own feelings. What did I get in the end?" Chapter 1974. My selfless dedication and my efforts were all for paving the way for her and Shawn's relationship. It was like I was made to personally deliver Gale to Shawn. I watched her give birth, watched her raise the child alone, and then watched her return to Shawn with the child. I was a fool. He could not go on like this. He needed a reward for all his effort. After listening to him, Ivy burst into laughter, tears streaming down her face, her body swaying. "Yes, Orum, you did indeed give a lot to Gale before, selflessly, as long as she was safe and happy. However, you forgot one crucial point." Orum frowned deeply. "What point?" "At that time, you were engaged to someone else." Ivy hit the crux of the matter. "You were engaged to Natalie. You knew you could only marry her, so you understood that your efforts for Gale wouldn't result in anything. Nor could they. You couldn't have your cake and eat it too. Even if she had agreed, Gale would never agree to be your mistress. Oh, Orum, back then you knew it was your own reason that you couldn't have her, so you were willing to give selflessly. Now that she is dead, and you're single, you feel unjustified when you give and you want to have her." This reasoning had never occurred to Orum. However, the words were tumbling out of Ivy's mouth, word by word. Orum felt shocked. He could not face it. No, it was not like that. It could not be as Ivy said. Ivy's words hit too close to home, exposing the ugliest, most despicable side of his nature. Instantly, Orem felt a surge of shame and anger. Shut up! He pointed a finger at Ivy. What I do and how I do it is not for you to judge. Yes, you're right. You don't allow anyone to point out a single fault in you. You, Orem, are a perfect gentleman, a paragon of grace and elegance. How could you possibly be so damaged inside? Ivy's face was full of mockery. Orem was left speechless by her words, simmering with anger, his chest heaving. For a moment, the study fell silent again. Ivy had thrown caution to the wind. Nothing mattered anymore since the truth was out tonight. She did not press the alarm. She wanted to continue maneuvering with Orem. Orem turned his back to her. After a long while he finally spoke. Ivy, there's no point in us trading accusations and airing each other's dirty laundry. You speak as if you're so high and mighty. I, Ivy, am more high and mighty than you, Orem. Hey, an actress who's been violated, how pure and clean you must be. It's only my ingrained upbringing that stops me from saying such harsh and demeaning things to a woman, Orem retorted mercilessly. Ivy found it laughable. He had done such shameless, despicable things, yet he dared to talk about upbringing. Discussing this with Orem was a waste of time and expression. He had gone mad, completely beyond normal reasoning. Fine, for the sake of your upbringing, let's change the topic. Ivy looked at him. You can't say harsh words, but you can strangle me? Is hitting women part of your upbringing? This hit Orem's heart again. His eyes flared with even more anger, but he made no move, just stared at her. His emotions had overtaken him to the point where he was indulging in conversation with Ivy. Chapter 1975. Just a warning, Orem replied coldly. Ivy, you've deceived me, yet you can still stand here unharmed. That's already me showing you mercy. I deceived you. What about you? What did you do? You handed me over to that filthy man, Paul. Ivy shot back, her voice trembling with anger. Ivy had pieced together the whole incident, understanding clearly what had happened. She and Gale had been drugged while Orem and Paul remained sober. Orem took Gale away, and Paul took her. Would Paul have dared to take her without Orem's approval? Does it matter to you? Orem suddenly laughed. Ivy, let me tell you something. I don't care. You were unconscious and unaware. You don't even remember what Paul did to you. When you woke up it was all over. You didn't lose your purity, so of course you can say such heartless things. I'm just stating facts. Do you know how much I don't care? Orem looked at her, his eyes suddenly filled with a strange tenderness. Ivy, I can marry you. She froze. Marry her? What was he talking about? Had he gone mad? You want to marry me? Yes, I can make you Mrs. Lefting, let you live a grand life in Sea City. What do you think, Ivy? Orem said calmly. Impossible. This was definitely a trap. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Ivy remained silent, waiting for Orem to reveal his true intentions. Orem slowly walked over, stood in front of her, and began to straighten her clothes with a gentle, careful touch, as if nothing had happened, as if the man who had strangled her moments ago was not him at all. Do you want to marry me? The title of Mrs. Lefting is enough to let you walk around Sea City with pride. You won't live any worse than Gale, Orem asked. You love Gale but you would marry me? Orem answered naturally, his previous anger completely gone. I can't marry Gale anymore. I even staged that whole bedroom scene. Yet she and Shawn are still so in love, inseparable. I can't break them up. And you know what? I think you're quite good too. So why not you? What do you say? Ivy felt a chill down her spine. This version of Orem was terrifying. No, no. She shook her head vigorously, trying to stay clear-headed. You don't want to marry me, you want to ruin me. If you marry me, you become my person. Your every word and action will be tied to me. When people mention you, they'll say you're my wife. How could I ruin you? Ruining you would be ruining myself. Ivy bit her lip. You don't love me, Orem retorted. And how much do you love me? She did not know how to respond. She did not love Orem as deeply as his ex-fiancée Natalie, who loved him to the point of madness, losing herself completely. However, Ivy did love him. She had to bury it in her heart. Loving a scumbag was not something to be proud of. She even felt it tainted the very word love. However, she did love him, still loved him, but would never let Orem know. Chapter 1976. All Orem ever did was hurt and used her, draining her of dignity again and again. Orem gripped Ivy's shoulders. Let's stop playing games, marry me, and we'll fight together. She stared at him blankly. Fight? Yes. As long as you keep everything a secret, I can marry you and promise you a lifetime of wealth and glory. Oh, and switch sides. From now on, he is our mutual enemy. We are teammates and, more importantly, husband and wife, Orem added. Ivy finally understood that Orem wanted to marry her to keep her quiet. He was trying to win her over because she was the one closest to the truth. Orem was still afraid that Gale would discover his true nature. "What if I won't marry you?" Ivy asked. Orem laughed and leaned in close to her ear. "Lost the battle, win the war," it was a clear threat. "I'll give you 5 minutes." Orem stepped back, raising his wrist to look at his watch. "Take some time to think about it." He started the timer. Ivy stood there, stunned. She understood Orem's intention. He wanted to win her over completely. He promised to treat her well. Ivy thought that if she were a woman greedy for wealth and status, she might have wavered at this moment. Unfortunately, despite knowing her for some time, Orem had never truly known her true character. He was arrogant, confident that she would surely agree with such a generous offer. If Ivy became Mrs. Lefting, half of the Lefting family's assets would be hers. That was a fortune she could never earn from a lifetime of acting. 3 minutes, Orem reminded her. Ivy glanced at him. She had never forgotten her original goal, to seek revenge. Whether facing threats or temptations from Orem, she had to stay true to her initial resolve. 1 minute, Orem recalled again. He appeared relaxed, arms crossed, exuding a sense of control. However, Ivy could see through his facade. Orem was not as at ease as he seemed. Having spent so much time with him, she had learned to read him. Orem desperately wanted to have Shawn's calmness, but he was still lacking. In every aspect he fell short of Shawn. Orem was not aware of this. He always believed he could surpass Shawn, thinking he just had not tried before. In practice, the gap between them was obvious. "Last 10 seconds, Ivy, you better think carefully. Sometimes, a single wrong decision can affect your entire life," Orem said. "If you choose to stand by Shawn's side, you'll gain a lot, I admit. But if you choose me, you'll gain even more. Weigh your options carefully." As Orem finished speaking, the time was up. Ivy slowly started to speak. Yes, chapter 1977, "I am willing to marry you." Orem smiled and asked, "Really? As long as you legally marry me." Ivy nodded. "The status of Mrs. Lefting is indeed too tempting. Good that you understand." Orem burst out into laughter. It was a deep, booming laugh that echoed throughout the room. "Come here? It seems you are sensible and a smart person," Orem beckoned. Ivy walked over as he wished. He reached out, letting her sit on his lap, lifted her chin, and scrutinized her closely. Beautiful, truly beautiful, enough to make a man lose his mind and itch with desire. But alas, tainted. "So regrettable," Orem said. Ivy retorted, "Do you regret that Paul had me first?" "A bit. But it's already happened and can't be changed. Let it be." After all, he could not possibly touch Ivy. He truly had not made up his mind about marrying her. It was just an empty promise, not like they required a marriage certificate immediately. The most important thing for now was to keep Ivy calm and appeased. "I've never met a man as magnanimous as you." Ivy suddenly raised her hand, hooking it around his neck. "Your woman slept with someone else, yet you act like it's nothing. And that person is your subordinate." Orem pinched her chin. "Is that a complaint? You treat me horribly. Can't I even complain? Can't I have some emotions?" "All right, you can." Ivy leaned closer to him, their lips just a breath apart. Any closer, and they would touch. Orem's breath quickened slightly. After all, Ivy was a woman, a beautiful woman with a great figure, and he could not entirely control himself. He was a normal man. This was exactly what Ivy wanted to see. As she confirmed that Orem's thoughts were still chaotic, she spoke softly, her breath landing on his face. "That night, did you manage to ravage Gale? I heard Paul asking you in the bathroom, and you were clearly angry and upset. That didn't feel right. You should have been bragging proudly, shouldn't you?" Ivy asked. She raised her hand and poked his chest. "Just like Paul bragged about having me." Orem's eyes flickered. "I just don't like others prying into my privacy," Orem replied. Though he had a beautiful woman in his arms, Orem was not seduced and remained rational. Ivy laughed coquettishly. "I think you're just being stubborn. If you really took Gale that night, truly tasted the woman you love belonging entirely to you, how could you marry me? The position of Mrs. Lefting would always be vacant, reserved for Gale. And besides..." Ivy's smile grew more enchanting, her fingers tracing circles on his chest. Her lips were already touching Orem's. "You have an obsession with cleanliness. You despise me for being touched by Paul, and every time after we kiss, you say you're going to the bathroom, but I know it's actually to rinse your mouth. You think it's dirty. And Gale is Shawn's wife. They snuggle in the master bedroom every night, doing all kinds of intimate things, again and again, year after year. Gale even gave birth to children, twins. A woman who's given birth surely wouldn't taste the same as a pure girl." The next second, Ivy's neck tightened. Orum's hand was gripping it again. However, he did not exert force and just held her. Ivy, I really want to twist it off right now. Chapter 1978. Fine, go ahead, let me die by your hand. You're truly a coward, too weak to even admit your own failures. So what if you didn't get Gale? Is that really such a disgrace to you? She said. Shut up! I insist on speaking. Only by getting Orum to admit the truth himself would Ivy have a strong piece of evidence. She had to force him to confess tonight. Ivy laughed coldly. You want to win me over but won't say a single honest thing. Orum, do you really think this will make me loyal and devoted to you? Why are you so interested in whether I touched Gale or not? Ivy gritted her teeth and answered, because I want to know if I'm the only one who was defiled. Was I the only one who suffered this humiliation? Is Gale still pure? If she is, then I'm the biggest victim. Clearly you were targeting her, yet I became the sacrificial lamb. If she's not pure, then why should she get everything? She's been with you, and Shawn still loves and cherishes her. Why? Ivy's face was full of resentment, like a vengeful woman. This expression and her words finally made Orum believe her a little. Why does Gale deserve it? She deserves all the good things. Shawn cherishes her, which is what she's earned. Without Shawn, I would cherish her too. You're not lucky enough, so don't be jealous, Orum said. What's so special about her? You wouldn't understand even if I told you. Orum snorted. Loving someone doesn't need a reason. Did you touch her or not? Ivy kept trying to steer the conversation back. Orum flung her away, his face full of displeasure. Shawn's bodyguards arrived quickly. I only had time to take off her clothes but not to go further. Finally, he admitted it. However, Ivy could not afford to celebrate. She had to keep pressing him. She mocked, glancing at Orum's crotch. Well, you like her so much and you didn't touch her? Even if there's no time, 2 minutes should be enough to get things done, right? Could it be? Ivy laughed louder. Orum, you can't perform. Do you have issues? Can't get it up, huh? Oh right, I remember you saying you never touched Natalie. Could it be you really? Orum grabbed her by the hair, yanking her close to him. I cherish Gale deeply. I didn't want to ruin that night just for the sake of possession. Understand? Ivy's face twisted in pain, feeling as if her scalp was being torn off. Orum then shoved her away roughly. He had always been making excuses for not sleeping with Gale. He planned that night just to touch her. Once achieved, his goal would be fulfilled. Why did he not do it? Because he had no time, no opportunity, and Shawn ruined it. And, as Ivy said, the more anxious and nervous he got, the more he really could not perform. Orum stood up, no longer wanting to face Ivy. From now on, you'll live in the Lefting family mansion. You're not allowed to step out. Why? Ivy looked at his back. I've agreed to marry you. We're in this together. Orum did not turn back. Why? Don't you already know? How do I know if you're truly in on it or just stalling for time, pretending to comply? I need to test your loyalty and see that you're truly on my side before I consider letting you go. Chapter 1979. Ivy bit her lip. Are we not filming the movie anymore? We can shoot other scenes first and film yours later. Orum! Ivy chased after him, trying to prevent him from closing the door. She did not want to be trapped in his house. She grabbed the doorknob, pulling with all her might. I've listened to you, isn't that enough? If you're not reassured, you can have someone monitor me 24/7. Of course, I'll monitor you and control your every move in the future, but that's for later. Right now you must stay here. With a loud bang, the door was shut. Ivy desperately shook the doorknob, but it was useless. She was being kept in the study by Orum. The study was a place full of secrets, company documents, files, contracts, so it was heavily monitored. Several surveillance cameras were watching her every move. The windows were sealed tight, leaving no escape. She could only stay here. What to do? What to do? I can't stay trapped here. Who knows what other methods Orum will use to torment me? Ivy muttered to herself. She searched around, trying to find something. Ivy noticed the spying bug in the corner of the carpet. During her confrontation with Orum, the device must have been swept into a corner, and now it reappeared in her sight. Orum, in his anger, had forgotten about the bug's existence. So, their entire conversation had been recorded. God was helping her. This was the most direct and powerful piece of evidence. She had searched high and low, only to find it effortlessly. Ivy walked over, pretending her legs were weak and she could not walk, collapsing softly to the ground. She quickly snatched the bug. She had to hide this and give it to Shawn. This was more important than her life. The contents of this bug were the evidence she and Shawn had been desperately searching for all this time. How could she get the bug to Shawn? Ivy could not even leave the study, let alone the house. Oh! She suddenly smacked her head. I was so anxious and tense. I made such a stupid mistake. She still had the alarm button. Earlier, when Orem had nearly strangled her, she did not dare to press it because she had not obtained the evidence. So, she had chosen to give up. Now, Ivy could let Shawn rescue her. This was her lifeline. Ivy happily pressed the button. 1 second passed, then 2, 3. The alarm remained unresponsive. What was going on? Chapter 1980. Ivy began pressing the button repeatedly, over and over, but the alarm device remained silent. The button must have run out of power. Despair washed over Ivy. Her momentary hope was crushed. What now? Should she resign herself to fate? Shawn would realize something was wrong when he noticed she had not gone to the set, had no schedules, and had stayed at the Lefting mansion all this time, right? He would come to rescue her, would he not? Ivy resolved to protect the listening device at all costs and get it to Shawn. It was evidence proof of Orem's crimes. It was a normal day at Wood Group. Shawn walked into the company with Gale by his side. Good morning, Mr. Wood. Good morning, Mrs. Wood. Employees greeted them as they passed by. Shawn, I can go to the jewelry department by myself. You don't have to personally escort me to my desk, Gale said. Hat's wrong? Nothing, I can handle it on my own. Even Joshua and Nicole managed to go to kindergarten by themselves. There's a sign at the school gate that says, "Parents stop her. Children can handle themselves." If even little kids can find their seats in the classroom, why do I? She wanted to say that she felt like she was not as capable as a kindergartner. Gale felt embarrassed. Oh, you feel embarrassed. Shawn quickly understood her thoughts. You care so much about what others think? It's not about others. It's just that I feel like I'm too useless. He ruffled her hair. You're an accomplished senior designer at Wood's Jewelry. Your work is highly regarded in the market. How could you be useless? But in daily life you have me, a husband to rely on. Why not rely on me? Gale was taken aback, unable to refute his point. Once again, she found herself being led by Shawn to her desk in the jewelry department under the watchful eyes of her colleagues. He even kissed her cheek before leaving. Sigh. Peach chuckled, winking. Gale, I remember you swore you wouldn't let Mr. Wood escort you anymore. I was wrong. Wow, that was fast. Gale scratched her head. I can't win an argument with him. He insists on escorting me, and his reasons are so logical that I can't refute them. Peach looked envious. That's the love of a husband. All right, back to work. Have you finished your design draft? Gale said, tapping her head. No, I'm stuck. Gale, take a look and give me some advice. How do you think I should design this part to make it stand out? Gale threw herself into work, discussing the design together. She did not notice Shawn turning back to give her a long, thoughtful look. Shawn did not take the elevator to the top floor office. Instead, he left Wood Group. Mr. Wood, where to? The driver asked. The hospital. Understood.